It seemed like a good one for us. We're brought out here by the very kind generosity of the folks at Freedom Works. So today for Trifecta, we thought what we'd do is talk about the Tea Party movement. And the question we have is it real? Is it going to stick around? Now, we've had a lot of important social movements, of course, in the last year. We've had the Coffee Party, we've had the Brown Baggers, we've had the Crash the Tea Party movement, we've had the F the Tea Party movement, we've had the One Nation movement, we've had the 95% of us movement, and all of these movements together, of course, account for hundreds of people out there in America. So the question is the Tea Party movement here to stay, and is it, as I maintain, really the last best hope of the last best hope? Because I don't fear capitalism, I fear the slow poison of just that intravenous grip where society just comes apart. So what do you think, Steve? Do you think this is real?
Well, whether or not I think it's real, it had better be. I was talking with my neighbor next door. We share this long driveway. We're taking out the trash. We run into each other. He's a retired Marine colonel. And he asked me, this was back in April, just about a week before I went down to Tucson to speak at the Tea Party rally, and I met Stephen Cruiser down there. I got over the hangover in May. But he asked me what I thought of this Tea Party movement, and it's funny that Bill used the phrase, last best hope, because that is exactly what I told my retired Marine colonel neighbor. This movement is the last best hope of this country. So it had better be real, because we are going down the tubes the way of Greece with this debt bomb in Washington. It's sucking up our wealth. We've got trillions in unfunded mandates just crushing us, or soon to crush us. So yeah, if this isn't real, it had better be, and it's up to us to help make it real.
Sam, there's a question for you, Scott. You know, I maintain that if American society is a body, that the proper role of the media is their immune system. They go looking for germs everywhere they find them and they just destroy them and so on. They obviously aren't doing that. The Tea Party movement is almost like the body's defenses are just suddenly coming to life. We just can't let this go on anymore. You think this thing is real, and you think this is really the last best hope?
Well, I think that it's very difficult to start a decentralized movement. It's hard to get one going. And so once one gets going, by the same token, it's very difficult to stop, because there's nobody you can pick up the phone and say, hey, by the way, it's over now. You guys can all, put down your signs and stop having your meetings and stuff like that. They're not waiting for orders. They're not coordinating necessarily with everybody across the country, although I know there's some loose confederations of Tea Party groups that are kind of communicating with each other. But there's no central command. And so this thing has the potential to go on even after the war is over. I was just reading in my history book, as I told you guys yesterday, I was reading how Jackson invaded Florida and captured it. The president didn't even know that he was doing it, and that the Battle of New Orleans happened after the peace had already been signed. And so there's a real potential here that you guys who are out there in your decentralized movement will continue no matter what they try to do, because there's no one person they can take down and take out.
Hey, Scott, can I interrupt for just a second? I need to throw something in. You'll notice that over the past year and a half, the president is always finding somebody new to demonize. You can't pick a target and stick to it. This week it's Boehner, before that it was Rush Limbaugh. It's always somebody new. And the reason is the real bad guys that the White House sees is us. It's the Tea Party movement, but there is no leader to demonize. And so you've got the president taking this shotgun, scattershot approach, and hey, guess what? It's not working. There's nobody on our side. There's no one figure they can strike at, and that's brilliant.
He talks about us like we were a dog. He really does. So round two. We know that the Tea Party has been just utterly tarred, and that every day they're looking for some new example of racism, and there's been thousands of Tea Party rallies with millions and millions of people over a year, 2 years now, and they're able to find one or two off-color signs, and this is all the evidence they need, of course, that this is a giant racist movement. I personally think one of the great benefits of the Tea Party, even if we don't get a single person elected, is it's made them overuse this term racism so many times that finally this nuclear weapon that the left has is just starting to lose its power. But the question provoked me now is, why do they hate this Tea Party movement so much? I maintain it's because they're the ones who are supposed to be out in the street with signs. We're stealing their show.
I think you're close. I think you're onto something, but I think there's something else. The original left-wing protest movement was not spontaneous. It was not organic. First it was directed from the universities and later the unions, and now directly out of Washington. Acorn, all of that. It was centralized. It was top down. This Tea Party thing is the real deal. It's what they have been claiming to be now for 40 years. And that's Dr. Bloss. I'm going to shut up and give Bill.
Extremely wise. What do you think, Scott? I mean, you can see this generalized, all across the board hatred. Fine, gotta find something to bring these guys down. You had an interesting conversation on the flight over here with a guy, and this kind of goes to what this Tea Party really is, isn't it?
There was a guy sat down next to me. We were on one of those little puddle jumper flights coming out of Allentown and going into Philadelphia, and so, you know, I always want to sit by the exit door because you generally get a little more leg room there, and I'm generally the biggest guy on any given airplane. But there was a guy bigger than me, and we wound up sitting shoulder to shoulder. Actually, I think we had to hold hands for half of the flight. It was a tight space. And he found out that I was a Republican, and immediately started asking me questions. Oh, by the way, he also happened to notice in the pouch in front of me the copy of my book, Laughing at Obama. And he said, volume 1. And he said, is that your book? And I said, yes. Now, I knew he meant, am I reading that book? He didn't know that I had written the book. But he started asking, well, what do you think of this president? What do you think of this healthcare thing? And about 3 minutes into the conversation, as I was explaining what I thought about the healthcare situation, he said, you know what? If those people on TV or on the radio or the politicians, the Republicans, would talk about that the way you just did, I think a lot more people would understand it and would agree with it. And later on, he was slamming on former President George W. Bush, and as we were going out, he said, you know, if George Bush had talked the way that you did to me on that airplane, I think I would have been a lot more supportive of him. And I said, sir, if George Bush had been sitting next to you on that airplane, he would have talked to you just the way I did, because he respects you as I do. About 3/4 of the way through the conversation, I told the guy, you know what, I think you're a lot closer to being a Republican than you know. And when he walked away, he shook my hand and he said, I'm a Republican, huh?
Wow. So now we get into a lovely segue. So now let's get into, for the final round, this idea of the difference between the Tea Party movement and the Republican Party, at least the traditional established Republican Party, because everybody knows that if the Democrats run opposed, they lose every election. So the question then becomes, what happens if we get some of these gains that we think we're going to get? Looks like it's going to be a real good November. Right, we're going to start seeing some, hopefully, Republicans take back the House, maybe the Senate. But there's a danger there, because if the House or the Senate becomes controlled by Republicans and nothing changes and nothing happens, then in 2012 the Democrats will be able to blame it on the obstructionist Republican Congress. So something has to change. Do you think the Tea Party movement is going to electrify this Republican sort of establishment course?
That really, I think, depends on what happens on election day. Do we pick up 26 seats, you know, which is the mid-year or midterm average, and that gets written off as just a huge failure for the Tea Party movement? Or do we gain 50 seats? 70 seats is not out of the question. There may be as many as 90 seats in play, 80 of those on the Democratic side. So if we have a big surge, that should not just scare the Democrats, it should scare Boehner. It should scare the heck out of Mitch McConnell. All these inside the Beltway Republicans, the rhinos, they should be scared. And let me tell you what they need to do. If we take this thing back in November, starting in January, we need to send bills to the White House for Obama to veto. You need to put him on the side of defending his own unpopular legislation by repealing it. And make it veto. People really care. That's what this next Congress needs to do.
You will write the word present on the bill, undoubtedly. My friend Stephen Green hosts the weekend blogs and Hair of the Dog segments at PJTV. He can be found at vodkapunda.com, and invented the practice of drug blogging because watching presidential speeches these days is virtually impossible without a stout fortification. Steve, thanks for joining us. Okay, final question for you today, Scott. This is the danger. The danger is what? You know, you want to have power, you have this giant reform movement to get the power. Congratulations, you got power. Now you can't go on doing business as usual. We had a discussion before about how sometimes people are saying, just don't talk too much about what you want to do because you want to get elected first and then we'll deal with it later. Is that a danger?
It absolutely is. You know, I'm reminded of Pat Toomey's book. Pat Toomey, as some of you know, is running for the Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. Yeah. And Pat wrote this book called The Road to Prosperity, which I've read. And one of the things he talks about is when he was elected to Congress a number of years ago, and he went there, from day one, people were lined up at his door with their hands out for some good cause that the federal government ought to invest in. But he said in all the time that he served in Congress, nobody ever came to him lobbying him to reduce the size of government and to cut spending. And I think we finally have a movement that potentially could be that lobbying group. You understand, I mean, those of you who live in Washington, D.C. know that there are more lobbyists in this town than there are legislators, and these people are doggedly determined because it's in their personal financial interest to make sure that government spends more. We need to become the force to make sure that government gets smaller and spends less. And you in the Tea Party movement can do that.
My friend Scott Ives, Senator from the satire at ScrabbleFace.com. He's author of a new book called Laughing at Obama, Volume 1. That's Volume 1 of, I forget, 25 or 30 volumes that finally get out before this goat rodeo is over. And as for me, let me just close by saying this. You know, we a year ago, certainly 2 years ago, we looked out on this landscape and this emergence of Barack Obama and the Democrats saying the Republican Party is finished and total realignment of America, and we just sat there and thought, oh my God, this is serious. But every single day since then, this man's credibility comes apart as he has to deal with the fact that reality doesn't go present. Reality is present, and you cannot fight gravity, economics, or any of these things. I personally believe, and in my heart I believe this, that Barack Obama is not a once-in-a-decade candidate. He's not a once-in-a-generation candidate. He is a once-in-history candidate. He is, for the left, truly the unicorn. He is once in history. This is the only chance they're going to have to do what they have to do. And as we look out into this horizon today, we can see the wheels coming off of this thing. The wheels are coming off of this thing. So my feeling is if we can hold the line in November of 2010 and stop them from doing any more damage, in 2012, if we can just launch that little foray of Aragorn and the rest of them coming out of what's left of Minas Tirith and just stand here in front of the gates in 2010, I believe in my heart that in 2012 we will stand there with tears in our eyes as the dark tower falls and that giant red eye comes crashing to the ground forever, never to rise again. I don't think we're going to live this year. So PJTV and my friends Steve Green and Scott Ives, thank you very much.